how Donald Trump has interpreted the events of the past few hours. Now, let's just lay out here in chronological order where we have been today. That at about 2 o'clock Australian time is when the ceasefire between Israel and Iran was due to take place. A rocket has landed in the north of Israel after that period of time. Now, Iran has suggested that they were not responsible for it. Israel absolutely believes that they are and has promised full retaliation because we understand that multiple people have died as that rocket has landed. Now, being so early in the morning in terms of Washington, D.C., let's again go back through the chronology with the first comments of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who is absolutely demanding no further action between these two countries, took to Truth Social and did so just 11 minutes ago from inside the White House. He wrote this message, which was, Israel, do not drop those bombs. If you do, it's a major violation. Bring your pilots home now. Signed, Donald Trump, President of the United States. He is trying to send a message to Israel to say, even if you believe that Iran has intentionally dropped one more missile with deadly consequences after the ceasefire period was in time, you have to rule a line under it. You cannot respond. Now, we know that the Israeli Defence Forces have said that because human life has been taken by that missile, that they believe that the ceasefire had been broken and they are planning to retaliate. So the President, in all caps, the internet equivalent of shouting, has said that Israel essentially has to rule a line under it and cannot respond to what has taken place. Then the President moved his way from the residency out to the south lawn of the White House, where he did speak to reporters. Now, he did so before boarding a helicopter, before boarding Marine One, which then flew to where Air Force One is. So if I can ask my team to go back and let's show in full the whole tape that we have. Now, this was not shown live because of media arrangements where, for safety reasons apparently, there is not live pictures which always come out of that walk when they're making their way towards the helicopter. At least that's what I understood it to be in this particular case. So he did make the comments. So inside the White House, Truth Social tells Israel, regardless of what's happened, do not respond. He then goes down to the reporters and says this.
Happy that Israel's going out now. There was one rocket that I guess was fired overboard. It was after the time limit and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. It's ridiculous.
Okay, so again, he's trying to suggest here that, okay, a line's in the sand. Somebody, now again, we are talking about the loss of human life here, so the metaphors, I'm trying to be as respectful as possible, but from Trump's perspective, somebody's put a toe over the line with one missile that's landed and taken life after that particular moment in time. Israel says, well, bugger what the original deal is. You hit us after that time. You're the one who's broken the ceasefire. We're the ones with the moral obligation and right to be able to respond. Trump is saying at some point this has to stop in terms of the tit for tat, that this happened and this happens, this reaction, that response, and that seems to be exactly where he is. Now, he's on his way towards the NATO meeting. That's over in the Hague in Europe. Now, several leaders have chosen not to attend. Quite interestingly, the freshly elected president of South Korea, leader of South Korea, has said that they are not going to be attending. Now, this is being interpreted by some of the MAGA types as some sort of a message potentially coming back through China. Now, I'll explain that in greater detail a little later. But certainly not friendly to the position of China when it comes to things is Japan. The Japanese leadership has said that they are not planning to go to NATO either. The leaders that are currently on the ground already speaking to reporters, among others, is Emmanuel Macron, the president of France. Now, he has said tonight that he praises the ceasefire and he recognises the importance of, a few days ago, the decision of Donald Trump to drop the bombs that he did, but appreciates the ceasefire where it currently is. The Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, who, remember, about a week ago, was himself hosting world leaders at the G7 summit. Well, he too has been speaking to reporters in The Hague, where he has said that he supports the president's view of things here, that essentially a line has to be drawn. Now, again, we are expecting, and we were expecting, that there was going to be some sort of a media statement to camera by the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, in this hour. Now, presumably, the full ability of communications of a United States president means a phone call has already happened or may well be happening as we speak, as he prepares himself to take off, as Air Force One starts to make its way from Andrews Air Force Base off to Europe. But very much the sitting position of the President of the United States is that it is up to Israel to help draw a line under the 12 days of conflict. Of course, 12 days ago is when the Israelis decided to, take on Iran directly, wipe out as much of their military and even political infrastructure as possible. There was then, of course, before last weekend, an expectation that Donald Trump, after leaving that G7 meeting that was in Canada, was going to be joining the effort, or at least was considering joining the effort to hit Iran. That, of course, took place over the weekend during a period of time that the United States and through the President, of course, had said that they were going to make a decision within the next 2 weeks. Of course, even when that announcement had been made, already the final planning was underway. So effectively, there was no real attempt to move back to the negotiating table. There was a want for the President of the United States to do his bit to assist Israel, and that was to drop those bombs in the middle of the night in Operation Midnight Hammer to take out 3 of the significant Israeli enrichment sites. And again, reading through the tea leaves here, the expectation, you would imagine, of the President is, in a transactional way, to be attempting to say to the leadership of Israel, look, I stepped in, I helped, I'm now asking you to help me draw a line under what is taking place. Because remember, under the temporary ceasefire that was announced at the start of today, that kicked in this afternoon Australian time, that once we hit, say, 10 p.m. Australian time, without any further issues, then that would move into a permanent ceasefire scenario. Of course, during that 24-hour period, we've had Iran strike back at US military facilities like the ones we've been pointing out for the past few nights that are dotted all over the Middle East. Of course, Qatar, Kuwait. Now, the leadership of Qatar is outraged that Iran had decided to enter their airspace with missiles and knock out or try to disrupt those American bases. But also it seems that Iran had attempted on some level, perhaps because they have no further ability to do more damage, but in a face-saving exercise, because remember, they don't care what the world thinks of them. They care about what is being consumed by their domestic population, and largely, while they have access to the internet, generally speaking, they also have access to things like VPNs to be able to get around the Iranian news services. The Iranian news services have been saying that the ceasefire only took place after Donald Trump had begged for a ceasefire after the so-called destruction of the American bases. So we know that, like everything, international leaders, they have their own domestic populations to deal with. Understandably, the Israeli community wants the Israeli Prime Minister to respond to a missile that had fallen after the ceasefire had kicked in, that has taken life. From the Iranian perspective here, and I am not suggesting moral equivalence, it's pretty obvious who the aggressor in the scenario has been, and that has been, of course, Iran trying to get a nuclear bomb with the express permission of wiping Israel off the map. Well, they are trying to tell their own people that they stood up for themselves, they fought back when it came to Israel, but more importantly, they were able to push America back into its own corner. Now, obviously, that is not true. But as you've heard in the past 15 minutes or so, Donald Trump essentially, again, saying to the Israelis, please help me draw a line under all of this. I helped you, so please help me. But obviously, again, there are people on all elements of this, who want to make sure that their main constituency is not the international community, but about what will be taken from home. Let's go to a full frame here as we start to see the cameras move away from Air Force One as it starts to make its taxi away and the journey towards yet another international meeting. Think about what has happened, and this is extraordinary. Think about what has happened in the past 7 days. In the past, 12 days, of course, is when the first of the Israeli strikes on Iran helped blow major holes in their political and military infrastructure, as well as the threat that they pose, at the very least the nuclear threat that they pose to other nations, certainly focused specifically in and around Israel. About a week ago, you had the President of the United States, who was in a meeting with other world leaders in Canada. That was a 2-day meeting. The Australian Prime Minister scheduled to be meeting on that second day, but he left after the first day. Now, apparently, in part, that was because the Iranians had apparently delivered a direct threat through a proxy. Now, whether that means staffers, people at the meeting, or potentially another world leader, part of the story that we will eventually learn when people are asked more questions or write their books or anything like that in the next little while. And the direct threat was that if you come after us, then we are going to come after America in America, because we already have people loyal to the regime in Iran, and those people will commit deadly suicide terrorist attacks. That was the moment that Donald Trump decided, I'm out. He left that meeting of the G7 halfway through. He returned to the Situation Room, where apparently the final elements of the planning, or at least the beginning of the permission for the bunker buster strikes in Iran, were being put in place. At the end of last week, going into last weekend, Iran believed, or at least what was being said publicly, that they were being given a 2-week window to talk. That was being interpreted as a 2-week window to maybe move some of the stuff that they didn't want to get blown up in those strikes by the United States and Israel, for those things to be moved out. There has been some footage of a train load of semi-trailers that were moving equipment out of some of those facilities. Again, then, last weekend, the scenario of the US strikes, where there were 14 of those bunker buster bombs that were dropped in 3 separate locations, as well as a whole collection of Tomahawk and other missiles which were being fired from, among other things, submarines and carriers that were in the area. Pretty extraordinary. Then, again, chronologically, following through these incredible days, then Israel decided to continue with its strikes, particularly as we were live on the air. Remember things like the doors being blown off a prison where political prisoners were. Also, they were taking after and moving closer towards trying to destroy things that were part of the Iranian regime. Of course, their tight control over the country. Now, while obviously, when we've been hearing about some of the missiles and ordnance that they have been hurling towards Israel, some of them being as old as technology from the 1980s, their capacity to keep throwing things seems to be very much dilapidated. We then had the scenario where, of course, the Iranian foreign minister went to Russia while we were on the air last night, and the Russians have said today that their best support that they could offer to Iran was not, as the former Russian president, but still part of the Security Council in Russia, had said, which was to offer a nuclear bomb, a ready-made one, to the Iranians. Instead, it was to support the ceasefire. Then, of course, the ceasefire rolls in. A missile lands in the north of Israel. The president says, let's rule a line under it. Israel says they are set to respond, and we could hear something any moment now. But as you can see, Air Force One is making its journey from the United States to The Hague in Europe for another meeting of world leaders. Again, 7 days in the world, 12, 13 days in the Middle East that we've all seen play out live on our televisions morning, noon and night, no matter where we are all the way around the world. But the message from the President of the United States before getting on that plane was Israel, do not drop those bombs, i.e. do not respond to what had taken place. If you do, it is a major violation. Bring your pilots home. Now, as we speak, we are searching for all of the usual sources for information from the Israeli government, be it the Defence Minister, the political officials, or the Office of the Prime Minister. Again, suggestions were that he was to make a statement at some point in the next few minutes. But again, Donald Trump, the direct message here to Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli military leadership is help me draw a line. Let's make the ceasefire come true by not responding to the Iranian missile that fell after the ceasefire had kicked in at 2 o'clock Australian Eastern Standard Time.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
Okay, even tougher stuff that is being said here, and certainly a frustration from the president. One of the things about Donald Trump when it comes to these situations is he doesn't hide. We know what he's thinking. Middle of the night, middle of the day, he'll bang it out on social media. He'll then go to a press conference, make it very clear, and then step in essentially to say, in a very direct way, that cooler heads need to prevail at this particular moment. Now, our plan this evening is to talk to Nigel Farage, of course, the potential future Prime Minister of the UK, man, of course, leading the Reform Party. In between, we will be going to lots of other locations around the country. We will also be having more conversations, if we can fit them in and around Australian domestic politics, but for obvious reasons, real time, real moments. Now, again, I'm going to have to send a message live to the team behind the scenes, is that if possible, obviously there's an F word in there, but I'd like to see the longest version of the comments that the President made while he was leaving the White House. Because, generally speaking, all world leaders, Australian leaders as well, they may want to get a message out, which means they only answer one question. The theatrics in and around an American president, and this was perfected by Donald Trump in his first term, practiced by Joe Biden in the second term, and sparsely but still used by Donald Trump in his second term, which is to make comments on the southern lawn of the White House, the one that is closer towards the Washington Monument, than, of course, the view that is available from Pennsylvania Avenue. And because of the whirring sounds of the helicopter, often when people are trying to ask questions, the president could pretend not to hear. But in this scenario, the president not only slowed down, he turned, he moved to the reporters. He clearly wanted to be asked as many questions as possible. He didn't just answer one, he answered multiple, and included there the little F-bomb. So again, I don't know if I can play the full amount of it here. If we have a full tape to turn around, we don't have it right now, but we will get to it in a moment or two's time. Also worth noting about what has been taking place about the Israeli position before in and around the 6 o'clock hour on the Australian Eastern side of things, was that the Israeli Prime Minister had apparently put some sort of another statement out here, and I'm going to read it for you here. Breaking news, on and off with the glasses. I reported to our security cabinet that Israel achieved all of our war goals in the operation, including removing the threat of Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Israel also damaged Iran's military leadership and several government sites and achieved control over Tehran's skies. So that statement was made when the assumption was everyone's going to hold the line when it comes to the ceasefire. Then missile falls into the north of Israel, again, in between, about 6:30, I think it was, Australian Eastern Time, so Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane and Canberra. Then immediate announcement from the defence officials in Israel was that they were going to respond with maximum force. So it wasn't just going to be a one-for-one missile exchange, but it was going to be a full and punishing response because this particular missile has taken human life. Therefore, the president, and you've seen his anger and you've seen his frustration, is that you had a scenario where both of the players in terms of Israel and Iran had, in and around that ceasefire time, said that they had achieved everything that they had wanted to achieve. An Iranian missile lands in the north of Israel, and that throws everything into chaos. Again, no other formal response from the Israeli government. Sophie Ellsworth is the Europe correspondent for News Corp. She has spent some time in Israel in the past week. It is a febrile situation always, but certainly when the President of the United States is throwing F-bombs in frustration, we are at a very interesting moment in time. In fact, I know we played it once. I want to play it again so you can hear it. I know you were setting up as well, Soph, but here is the President expressing deep frustration, yes, with both sides, but in this hour, a frustration with Israel, essentially appealing to them to help him hold the ceasefire in place. Here were his comments on the South Lawn. Again, I hope to play you the full exchange, which goes for a couple of minutes on the other side of this conversation with Sophie, but let's hear what he had to say.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.
All right, Sophie, again, you know this part of the world well, but you also know that the Americans have been nothing but supportive when it comes to Israel, the leadership, the reference, of course, with Donald Trump referring to the partnership that he was having. Basically, as I think in one of the previous social posts, he referred to a great team that he and Benjamin Netanyahu had made. Well, he's annoyed with his teammate tonight.
He absolutely is, Paul. You can see the frustration. You can hear the frustration. His words speak for themselves. Obviously, this is a situation that is moving so quickly. But just a few days ago, Paul, we were talking on your program, and I was showing you those giant signs in the background on a freeway I was standing that said, "Thank you, Mr. President." Israelis were so happy with his actions that resulted in those taking out the nuclear positions in Iran, and they were very grateful for that. But this has moved so quickly. Now, just earlier this morning, I was in northern Israel when those alerts went off. I got one on my phone saying run to shelter. I was on a freeway in a car, had to quickly pull over and find a safe room in a bunker. But this is extraordinary that Donald Trump has come out and made these comments. I was talking to Israelis when I was in this bunker, and they're sort of saying to me, well, the ceasefire is only a few hours in. It takes time. Now, it happened about 10:30 local time. We're 7 hours behind in Israel. So this situation is so volatile. But I can certainly tell you, Paul, there's many people who still remain very nervous of where this will go next. And it appears perhaps this ceasefire is failing and failing fast.
Now, again, the frustration of the president, because his emotions in all of this are key. No doubt, of course, very ongoing communication that's happened between Israel and the United States, leader to leader, and then obviously up and down the military chain. Normally, in moments like this, we're able to see pretty fast response from Israel and its government in real time via a whole collection of social media. Yet again, we're seeing a scenario where at this moment, there seems to be radio silence coming from the Israeli government.
Well, this has only just happened, Paul. Donald Trump has only made these comments a short time ago. But yes, the Israeli government are always very quick to respond. They're prolific on social media and they're updating, their various channels, minute by minute. So, it won't be long before they hit back. But I can't imagine the Israeli government will be too thrilled with President Trump's latest comments. But Paul, this is just such an evolving situation. Who knows where it will go next? And many people are in doubt now. Should Israel hit back? Should they cop it from Iran? Did Iran do the wrong thing? They sent those missiles to northern Israel when the ceasefire had started. Now, it was interesting because Israelis seemed, when I asked them, as I said, just hold on, it's only a few hours in. I was surprised with that reaction. I thought they would really hit out and say, this is not on. They've already broken this ceasefire.
Yes. I think we've got a chance to play the full version of the Trump comments in a moment. So I'll ask you one more question as we put that technology in place, Sophie. But again, please stick with us for as long as you can. In this scenario where we've had literally, incredible 12, 13 days. We've talked about the military side of things, the political side of things. This time last week, it was the G7. He's on his way now to NATO. it is extraordinary that we are seeing as much as we are seeing in real time, where we see negotiations. We also see that whatever the expectation is of the news day, it often ends up being upended and very quickly. So even though it's meant to be a meeting in The Hague, who knows how quickly before either he turns the plane around, comes back, or how long he even stays there.
Well, Paul, really, I mean, just to give the inside of the media, they are working absolutely around the clock on this story, especially when we're sending stories back to Australia. Things are happening in different time zones. Stuff is happening so quickly. Updates are changing everything rapidly that the dial can be shifted within minutes. I mean, 1 minute, you know, we're in a hotel bunker filing about missile attacks. Next minute, there's a ceasefire. Next minute, the ceasefire is broken. Next minute, we're pulling over on a highway because there's missile alerts going off. I mean, it's so unpredictable, Paul, and so concerning for people, particularly in Israel, who just don't know what's going to happen next. And while they were very happy with Donald Trump and the US's actions earlier in the week, I'm pretty certain, Paul, there's not many people in Israel resting easily, and especially with these latest developments this morning, because that ceasefire was so critical, and it now appears that it has failed very early in. But look, we could be talking in a few hours, and this could drastically shift yet again, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Sophie. Look, I'm going to put you on standby, but I know we've got lots of things to bounce around right now, and including whatever you might be up to. And I'm going to hold you any longer than you're available to us. But thank you so much for being here. All right, so let me get back to this. Donald Trump has really shaken things up, shown an absolute frustration with Israel and the potential Israeli military response to the Iranian missile that landed and killed people in Israel after the ceasefire came into effect 2 o'clock this afternoon, Australian Eastern Time. He's currently in a plane on his way to a meeting of NATO leaders, many of the key security leaders around the world, and certainly the focus of the Western world. Before that, he put out a Truth Social post where essentially he, in all caps, the internet equivalent of yelling, he told the Israelis, essentially, do not respond. We have to draw a line. Please help me draw the line. He then goes downstairs on his way towards the helicopter and made comments which are going to be, well, obviously, in real time, huge news, but certainly ones that I wanted to bring you in full, because even though the highlights we have shown you of key messages and this moment of dropping an F-bomb, I wanted you to see the full comments, because as always, when you see things in their context, as live, you're able to have the better insight as to what's going on, rather than somebody like myself trying to interpret it for you. So here is a couple of minutes, in fact, the full exchange that the President, Donald Trump, had with reporters at the White House before getting on the chopper to get on the plane to go to The Hague.
That Israel's going out now. There was one rocket that I guess was fired overboard. It was after the time limit, and it missed its target. And now Israel's going out. These guys got to calm down. It's ridiculous.
How will you respond if the ceasefire is fired?
I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either. All I do is play both sides. I'm going now, as you know, to NATO. Some of you are going with me, and I think it's going to be successful. We'll see. I'll let you know.
Are you going to see the agreement? It's a new dawn in the Middle East. Thanks to the agreement you managed to achieve. What are your future plans for the region, for Saudi Arabia, Israel, Gaza, the hostages?
Look, you're asking me about women in the Middle East. It's getting a lot better. Things are happening at a high level. As you know, Saudi Arabia's done a really good job. It's coming out far faster than I thought. So we're very happy about what's happening with women in the Middle East.
No, I'm talking about a new dawn in the Middle East that you managed to achieve last night.
Yeah.
The region is going to a new place with this agreement. Can you tell us what's your future plans for Gaza, for the hostages?
It's a new dawn. I appreciate the question. You're very nice. Who are you? Have Israel calm down because they went on a mission this morning. I got to get Israel to calm down now.
Did you get to speak with the Prime Minister? Did you talk to Prime Minister Netanyahu last night?
I speak to everybody.
You urge both sides not to violate the ceasefire, but reports coming from the region suggest that the sides accuse each other for violating the ceasefire. So
I think they both violated it. I don't think I'm not sure they did it intentionally. They couldn't rein people back. I don't like the fact that Israel went out this morning at all, and I'm going to see if I can stop it. So as soon as I get away from you, I'm going to see if I can stop it, okay?
Have you spoken to him this morning? How confident are you that Iran's completely demolished?
I think it's been completely demolished. I think the reason we're here is because those pilots, those B-2 pilots, did an unbelievable job. And, you know, the fake news, like CNN in particular, they're trying to say, well, I agree that it was destroyed, but maybe not that destroyed. You know what they're doing? They're really hurting great pilots that put their lives in the line. CNN is scum, and so is MSDNC. They're all, and frankly, the networks aren't much better. It's all fake news, but they should not have done that. Those pilots hit their targets. Those targets were obliterated, and the pilots should be given credit. They're not after the pilots, they're after me. They want to try and demean.
You don't believe that Iran can rebuild its nuclear program?
No, Iran will never rebuild its nuclear. From there? Absolutely not. That place is under rock. That place is demolished. The B-2 pilots did their job. They did it better than anybody could even imagine. They hit late in the evening. It was dark with no moon, and they hit that target with every one of those things, and that place is gone. But when I see CNN all night long, they're trying to say, well, maybe it wasn't really as demolished as we thought. It was demolished. You take a look at the pinpricks, and you see that place is gone. And I will say, I think CNN ought to apologize to the pilots of the B-2s. I think that MSDNC ought to apologize. I think these guys really, these networks and these cable networks are real losers. You really are. You're real losers. You're gutless losers. I say that to CNN because I watch it. I have no choice. I got to watch that garbage. It's all garbage. It's all fake news. But I think CNN is a gutless group of people, and the people that run it, nobody even knows it's been sold so many times. But the people that run it ought to be ashamed. MSDNC, a guy named Brian Roberts, he heads it. He's a disgrace. He's a weak, pathetic disgrace.
Even when world events are taking place, ceasefires are barely holding in the Middle East. Plenty to say about the American media, is the President of the United States. He is now in the middle, well, the beginnings of an 8-hour flight between Washington and The Hague in the Netherlands, and he's back on social media. Another statement from the President of the United States as he is settled into his chair. Israel is not going to attack Iran. All parties will turn around and head home, while doing a friendly plane wave to Iran. Nobody will be hurt. The ceasefire is in effect. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States. Now, let's keep that up on screen for a second, because obviously you can interpret this one of two ways. You can interpret this as he has received some sort of assurance that Israel is not going to attack Iran, or that is him predicting that Israel is not going to attack Iran. Why? Because, of course, as he had said earlier in the day, and earlier he made those particular comments. All right. Now, we are going to weave in and out of this and some Australian news, but I've got a feeling we're going to be doing a lot more breaking news coverage in the next little while.